I can't believe it. For those of you who have been following, what I want you, I can't believe this is our third installment of 5. So gosh, we're on 3 of 5 as far as our classes. My name is Sonny Grint, and I am here to work with you a little bit about now some sewing techniques. We started with just terms, like what are the different terms on our machines, and what do you need as far as getting started as a sewist. So I think that is also really important. And then last time we talked about threading and winding a bobbin. So this time we're going to take that the next step further, and that next step really is all about now that you're threaded, what do you do, right? We've got a machine. We're threaded. Now, what do we do with it? So today is going to be all about zigzag and straight stitch. Okay, so we're going to really start with the basics, but hopefully give you all a couple ideas that maybe with a straight stitch, you wouldn't have done this, or I'm going to show you a couple more tools and different things like that. So that's what we're going to do today. And pardon me, just one other little thing, just so to keep you in mind, next week, we're going to move on to buttonholes, blind hem. I think someone last time asked about the invisible hem or the blind hem. So that'll be next time. And also the multiple zigzag stitch. So, starting just doing as we go along, we're just doing bits as we go along. So what I want to start with, like I said, is we're going to start with just a straight stitch and talk about stitch length on a straight stitch. And then also talk about stitch width on a straight stitch, which seems, I know, counterintuitive maybe to you, but what that does is that's actually going to move a needle position. Now, today, again, I was so fortunate. I have Vanessa here with me who's answering lots of your questions on the chat. So please certainly, if you have a question, she's happy to answer or give it to me, so we'll answer. Amy's also here from Singer, and so she's going to be working with us and also helping answer questions, maybe giving you some links if you have questions about where to get stuff. So, and Bianca, I already said she's here to help with the cameras. So really excited to have you all here with us, and let's go ahead and get started. Now, everyone, sometimes I see at the bottom a chat flash up, and so I see lots of different machines being put in the chat. And again, that helps me to know whether it's the machine brand or the machine model, whatever it is. Why I'm taking a moment here is I am going to be working on our Singer Heavy Duty again. Every machine is different, everyone. I can't have all of them here with us, right? So I just am going to kind of ask that, I'm going to talk about where a dial is on my machines. So on my machine or, different machines. However, I'm just going to ask you, if you on your machine, you're just going to have to locate it on your machine, because it really is tricky. I can't have all the machines or the different brands. I've got all of our Singer machines that Michaels carries, but really you're just going to have to find that on your machine. So whether it be with your manual or go on to, your manufacturer website, whatever it is, but we can help you with these. But I know it's tough, and I know you have questions, but really that's where you're going to have to go to get those super specific things. Okay, so just wanted to remind us of that. So what I'll do is I am going to actually, and Bianca, I'm going to go ahead and change to my other camera for a moment. And we're going to do that later. And so what I kind of did is, it's hard for me to set everything up here. I know that you all know in the world we have today, which is a little bit different than what it used to be, we're working in different areas, right? So what I'm going to do is, this is our Singer Heavy Duty machine. And so this is a very common very traditional way of choosing a stitch. Now, what I want you to see is you can look on your machine, depending upon which machine you have, and often you will see a little dial that has different stitches on it, right? So it has different stitches on it, different looks, different pictures. If I move over here to our Singer SM024, you're also going to notice that the front and this dial here has different stitches on it. That is your stitch selection dial. Okay, so that's how we're going to choose our different stitches. If I go to our back Singer machines back there at the back, our Singer M1000, which is our smaller machine here, this is more basic. It is more so for mending. And so it has one dial and you just choose the stitch you want. It makes it very simple. And then up it with our other machine up there at the top, if I can get that, a good picture of that for you up there, it's going to be very similar to our heavy duty. So really, guys, what you need to do on your machine is to find your stitch selection dial. So that's what's important for us right now. And when you turn it, that's going to be choosing the stitch that is on the dial itself. So we're going to start with a straight stitch. Now, I know that some of you on this particular model see that there's not only a black little dashed line that is your straight stitch, but also a couple other, like mine is, I got a blue and a red, and those are stretch stitches. And everyone, we'll talk about those stretch stitches a little bit in one of our next episodes. I call it an episode, gosh, part 3 of 5 episode. But anyway, it just sounds really, it sounds crazy, right? But this one, that straight stitch, that one that is just that black line, that's what we want to find. And just above this, everyone, that is your stitch length. Now with stitch length, several of you asked last time, and what I want to do is I went ahead and did a little sampler for you. And you'll see that I am showing you a stitch length at 2 millimeters, 2.5 millimeters, and 3 millimeters. That's my little stitch guide here. The weight of your fabric, and then sometimes technique, but really the weight of your fabric, that's really what you're going to choose your stitch length for. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to set this down. I went into my my husband's closet, right? So if you see just a basic man's shirt, right? A basic man's shirt. This is pretty much a medium woven fabric. So just again, talking about just your basic man's shirt, medium woven fabric, that is your stitch length of 2.5. So again, if you're taking notes, just your medium woven fabrics, 2.5 is the stitch length you want to use. And that actually is in millimeters, really the size of the stitch itself, okay? And so sometimes, again, depending upon your machine, it may not say 2.5, it's just going to be in the middle. This is kind of the middle stitch length, is your average stitch length is 2.5. If you are looking at denims, so again, your jeans, your heavier fabrics, right? So your jeans are heavier fabrics. That's going to be the 3.0. So the heavier fabrics, you may make your stitch length a little bit longer to 3.0. And then finally, for lighter weight fabrics, and a lot of quilters will use their stitch length. Okay, so a lot of quilters will use their stitch length at 2.0. So average 2.5, 2.0 for quilting and lighter fabrics, 3.0 for heavier fabrics, and also for top stitching. And I'm going to show you that here in just a little bit. Okay, so kind of a little guide for you. And everyone, the other thing I would do is, guess what? Get a piece of fabric and try and do exactly what I did, right? So do a little stitch length of 2.0, 2.5, and 3.0. So I'm going to bring it really close into the camera. And you can see now I understand what those differences are. So I do want you to test that. All right, so I do want you to test that and try that out just a little bit. All right, and so this stitch length dial, truly, it just turns, and the little dot there at the top, that's where, like right now, I'm between 2 and 3. So I line that up here, and that's my 2.5, my average stitch length. Going down to in this area, you'll see here, that's like when we're going to next week when we work with buttonholes, that brings stitches super close together. And then going up to 4, if you have a super long stitch length, that may be for gathering. And I'm going to talk about all of those. So don't worry about writing that down right now, but that's how you just change that stitch length. So Vanessa, I saw a couple things popping up. Is there anything that I should address with the whole group before we get going?
What happens if you use the wrong stitch length with a fabric?
So the question, great question, you guys, if you use, let's say you use a smaller stitch length with a heavy fabric, or a long stitch length with a lighter weight fabric, really what you're going to see is it's going like a long stitch length on a light fabric that might pucker a little bit, and you'll see it pull a little bit, right? The small stitch length on a heavy fabric, it's just going to like dive into the fabric, and it would be really hard to get out, and there's no need for that. Again, suggestion for all of us, and I still do this, everyone, even after sewing for quite a few years, I always test my stitch length with my fabric. I try it out. So I take, 2 pieces of my fabric, and I definitely choose, I start with medium weight fabric, with the 2.5 stitch length for medium weight fabric, and then a little bit less or a little bit more, depending upon what it is. So guys, it really is testing and practice. And I didn't say this at the beginning, but all of these techniques that we're going to be working with, you really do want to test, all right? So you want to test your stitch, your thread, your needle, all of that with the fabric you're going to sew on. It's worth it. It's worth it to take that quick moment to test. All right, so that's what's going on with stitch length. And I do want to, I'm going to move up to the top. And what you're going to see up here at the top is, here is my stitch width. It says width, but on some of your machines, it just may show a little zigzag stitch like that. In a straight stitch, changing width, okay, will change what's called needle position, and I'm going to show you that. Also over here, there is a way to change needle position too. Now, here's the thing, and I'm just going to show you how it's done, and then I'll show you what happens. So you just turn the dial like that, or on the width, you change this up here. So we change this just a little bit. The reason why I'm showing you this here, but everyone, not every machine has stitch width, okay? Not every machine has stitch width. So because of that, you just have to, again, check out your, I'm trying to get a very specific shot here for us. You're just going to have to check out your machine as well as your manual, or again, you might have to go to your manufacturer's website. Now, what I want you to look at, and why I said I wanted to get a very specific shot. I see where my finger is, guys. This is your needle, right? So that's your needle. We know that. We threaded it last time. But I want you to look really closely at that, because when I change my stitch width, so remember, look at what's happening to my needle. Oh, I'm sorry, I just moved it. See how the needle actually is moving? You can see it on that background of the white. You see that? I hope you can see that. I think it's really, that is, again, that is needle position. And you can move it to different sides, depending again upon the machine you have. All right, so it depends on the machine you have. Again, not all machines have that needle position, but if you have that, that's what it's doing. And you would use that for like top stitching or doing different things, putting in a zipper even maybe. So that is why you would do that. Now, everyone, one of the biggest things you always are going to do with a straight stitch is you're going to make a seam on a garment. So you're going to make a seam on a garment. I'm just going to back up a minute so you can see this. So making a seam on a garment is when you put two pieces of fabric together. And notice I use my zigzag, and I'll explain this here in a minute, as a seam finish. So I went ahead and used that to finish the edges so that wouldn't fray, so my fabric won't fray. But basically that straight stitch is your seam, okay? And whether it's a seam for quilting, we'll talk about that, or if it's a seam for making a garment. There are, now we're getting more technical here, right? We're getting more technical. I pulled out a pattern of mine that I have used a couple different times. So this is just the instructions for a pattern. And when you are making garments, okay, so when you're making garments, there always is a recommendation, and I'm going to bring this up really close here, of a certain size of what is called a seam allowance. Okay, so a certain size of what the seam allowance should be. And notice this one says 5/8 of an inch on this particular pattern. So as a new sewist, it's kind of, sometimes we think, what are all these markings for? Where is all this stuff going on? If you do look on your throat plate here, there's probably a marking that says 5/8 of an inch, because that's what most garments are made with, is a 5/8 of an inch seam is what it's called. So basically, what you want to do, and I'm going to actually, guys, I'm going to do one other thing. I want to make it hopefully so you can see very well here, is what I did. Now remember all of those great pins that you guys have and you purchased. I have my two pieces of fabric. The width I used on the zigzag was about a 4. So it doesn't have to be super big. You just want to have that along the edge. And then you actually are going to put those two pieces of fabric with the pretty side. You remember from our first week, the pretty side is the right side. So we're going to put right sides together and use these pins. Okay. And it is always good when you are pinning. Okay, so it's all really good while you're pinning to pin. See what I'm kind of doing parallel to, so not actually, I said that wrong, perpendicular to, gosh, you guys are gonna, well, you'll never forget, it's perpendicular to the edge. You don't want to put your pins like this because that makes it too hard, because you should never sew over pins, everyone. You should always take out your pins as you're sewing. Now, I know, depending upon your machine, you may have a 5/8 inch mark like mine does. You may not have a 5/8 inch mark to align with. It really depends on the machine you're on. There are a few different ways you can actually mark this. You want to mark, or it's going to be from where your needle is in the center to the right of the machine. So you could take a seam gauge. I didn't actually talk about a seam gauge last time, but basically you can take a little seam gauge and it has a little marking, and you can actually mark on it like a piece of tape or something like that. However, Another thing that is actually pretty great is Singer does have, it's called this little foot, it's called the So Easy foot. And the So Easy foot has markings. And with that, thank you, Vanessa. So this little foot actually has markings on it. And each of those markings is, this is 3/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 5/8 inch, and actually 1/2 inch and then a full inch. So I made those little markings. I wrote it down on my little piece of paper here. However, to Vanessa found my seam guide for me. It's so great to have good friends. I hope you guys have great people you sew with. So this is a little seam gauge. It's an older style. Michael's has much newer ones that are really very nice. So, but this is an old one. My mom actually gave this to me, so I still have it. But this little seam gauge, the easiest thing to do is to go right here, see how I can move this little gauge. And you just kind of measure from the needle to the outside, and you can put a little mark on your throat plate. Or in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change to my So Easy foot. And this is a really, really great foot, and Michael's does have this for you. So if you are looking or needing a foot, you do want to make sure it fits your machine, of course, depending upon what machine you have. To change the foot, so I'm going to actually move my machine a little bit, so hopefully you can see it. To change the foot on the back of this machine, there is just a little lever. Can you kind of see that lever, especially when I pull that away on that yellow background? When you press that forward, the foot just comes off, and you can take that right off. And then, now, I did not say this, and I should have, everyone. You want to make sure that your presser foot is up. So make sure that that presser foot is up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to align this and then go ahead and press that, and it snaps in, and now it's hooked in. So I'll do that again. Okay, I'll do that again for us, because make sure your presser foot is up. Get the little lever on the back that pushes and releases that presser foot. Now what you're going to do is we're going to put this back, and it either snaps right on, or you can press that little lever again. So that's how you're going to do that. And guys, I am a firm believer that tools make your sewing easier. And this is a fabulous tool, this little foot. It is just wonderful. So, all right. So check this out. I'm gonna go ahead, and when I put my presser foot down, so when I put my presser foot down, what you're hopefully seeing is I've got the guide on my foot is right along the edge of the fabric, my finished edge. And this is where several of you last time, actually, so several of you last time, you asked this question about actually using the reverse. And if this was going to be an open seam, notice I just took one stitch forward. I am going to use my reverse lever, and gosh, guys, right there. So that's you want to look for a lever that has a little upside down arrow, right? So I want to be close in so you can see how I'm stitching. Okay, so there we go. I think I can do that a little bit with the camera. There we go. Because I'm now going to hold my reverse button down and go in reverse to hold my seam at the beginning and then come back forward. So I took about 5 stitches back. It's very important. This is why we love our little pin cushions, right? You can see I've added more pins from the last time we were together, because you're going to take out your pin and put it in, whether your pin cushion or wherever, but you want to make sure that you're taking out pins as you sew. I get close I take out that pin and put it in my pin cushion. You do not want to sew over pins. And if you're wondering why, you can, if you hit a pin with your needle, it can actually not only damage the needle, but it can damage the machine. And that what'll happen is it's very important that the needle goes down at the right time to pick up the bobbin thread, and you can actually throw it out of timing. So just don't sew over pins. Last little bit, reverse. And I'm just going to use my thread cutter on the side. And there you go, guys. So a little reverse at the beginning, little reverse at the end, and there is your seam. Now, when you pull this open, you shouldn't have, you can see, looks really nice. There's no pulls, no puckering. You know, to the question that was asked earlier, if I would have used, you know, a super long stitch on this fabric, it may have puckered a little bit. So, you know, you just have to test, just kind of like what I just did with that. And by the way, as I was getting ready for our class, you'll notice how much nicer this is, nice and flat and even. I went ahead and I got a new iron. You know, it's the little things in life. Sometimes getting a new iron is a really great thing. And so I was able to mess around with having a nice new Singer iron for that. It was fabulous. So anyway, so easy guide foot, reverse at the beginning and end, and that is your basic seam, everyone. 5/8 inch is really your basic seam for garment sewing. So any questions, guys? All right. So now let's go ahead. I'm going to take this foot off. I do like to keep my information, and a lot of times I will even keep these little packages because I think it's a great place to keep my feet. If you don't have that, I will even sometimes get bags and put them in bags. And notice I put my little numbers on there so I could remember. So I don't have to measure every time. So that makes it really nice and easy. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do, everyone, is, and I'm gonna say this, and Vanessa and Amy and Bianca will get the information, but how many of you are quilters or want to be quilters? Anybody out there? Can raise your hand. You can say yes. I think yes. I see yes. Quilting is such a cool thing, and you know, I will say a lot of different times that I am not a quilter, but I can quilt, right? Vanessa is a fabulous quilter. But the thing is about quilting,
a lot of yeses.
A lot of yeses. That is so great. The thing is if you are starting to quilt, quilters, you basically are using a straight stitch, right? So we're using a straight stitch. This is where I'm going to come back. And again, depending upon your teacher or what you learn, again, a little bit smaller stitch length of 2.0 is really great for quilting. The biggest reason is quilters don't like to go back and forth. You don't secure the stitch at the beginning because it's too thick. And so we don't want it to be too thick. So basically what you're doing is you are ending up making a smaller stitch that's a little bit more secure at that beginning and end. Now I don't know, Bianca, maybe we can flip back to my other camera, because ladies, I do want to show you real quick here. I will recommend that you all are, when you start quilting, if you're a beginning quilter, start with something small. I started with a queen size quilt, and my husband, 4 or 5 years later, I think finally got it for his birthday, right? So start with something small, try something. This little wall hanging, I used some triangles, right? But this is a little wall hanging. I tried different blocks just to kind of see, what do I like? What don't I like? Do I like triangles? Would I rather do strips? So again, something simple like this to get you started. I see someone just said that that's kind of a nice block. Yeah, I like that block too. You know, something different, something simple. It really is like, unless you know that you're going to devote your time to it, I really recommend starting something a little bit smaller. Okay, so now we'll go back to our other camera. Thanks, Bianca, for doing that. So what we'll end up doing is quilting is kind of its own language, but also it uses a different stitch, a different seam allowance. All right, so it uses a different seam allowance. The seam allowance for quilting is actually 1/4 inch. So again, if you're taking notes, it's 1/4 inch. The edge of our normal presser foot, okay, so the edge of our normal presser foot is more than 1/4 inch. Depending upon your machine, some of our machines come with what is called a 1/4 inch foot. And that's this little guy. This is a 1/4 inch foot. It just depends on the machine. Again, you can, okay, you can mark on, you'd have to mark in front of, okay, so you'd have to mark in front of the presser foot where your 1/4 inch would be. This particular foot, and again, I'm putting it on the same way. There we go. Again, great tool. And just pulls that right through. But, oh, before I go any further, I'm going to say this. I got to say this a couple different times. I have to say it to myself. Can you all see that foot? There's a little bitty circle right there. That is where the needle goes down. This is a 1/4 inch piecing foot, but it's a straight stitch only foot. Straight stitch only, meaning, see how you've got that bigger opening there? That means you can use a zigzag. This is only a straight stitch and only in the center needle position, So it's really important, because if you don't use a center needle straight stitch for that particular foot, you will break a needle. Ask me how I know this. You will break a needle. I've done it many times. And you do it once and then you forget about it and then you do it again and you're like, oh, wow, I'll remember next time, until you don't, right? So I think it is, again, center needle straight stitch, very important.
The 2 feet
Oh,
side
of
by
course.
side again.
Of course, I'm happy to. So again, here is your center needle straight stitch, okay? And then this is your normal standard sewing foot. So I'm trying to get the right lighting so you can see how this has got a bigger opening for where the needle is, and that one is a lot smaller.
Also, the width of that first foot is much wider.
Yeah, and to Vanessa's point, if I kind of go back to back like that, can you see that? The normal sewing foot is a lot wider than the 1/4 inch foot. Yep. So that way you can kind of see what's going on with that. All right. So with the 1/4 inch foot, I'm not going to do a lot of piecing today. I just want to share with you, but I did have the fortune of having this fun fabric, right? That last time I showed you we talked a little bit about the hand of fabric and that sort of stuff. I just think this is so pretty. Vanessa and I were talking about this particular fabric. Her granddaughters would love, and I think it's just a really cute thing. With that in mind, I do want to share, I did cut a couple strips of this great fabric. So a couple strips of the fabric. Now, everyone, I don't know if you have had the opportunity. I'm just going to scoot this over. If all of you have thought about, a mat, a rotary cutting mat, rotary cutter, and a ruler, right? It is something that will make your quilting especially a lot faster. And I'll explain why here in just a minute, okay? But if you, this is another tool we hadn't talked about, but if you are wanting to become a quilter, doing some quilting, it really is something that you want to think about investing in, because that is, it really helps your quilting. Now, I have changed my stitch length to the 2.0. I have the right side, so the pretty sides of my fabric are together. The strips I cut were simply, they're just 2 inches wide. So from side to side, they're just 2 inches. And again, as a quilter, you're probably not going to reverse at the beginning of a seam. That is just something that's not going to happen. And I'll explain here in just a moment. But let's go ahead and following right along that edge. I'm not going to go all the way down to this, so I'm just going to stop here. But what you can see here is, notice I did not finish an edge. Don't really have to for this. And I do this right. Look at the distance. Look at the difference in how wide the 5/8 inches versus the 1/4 inch. When you're quilting, you want a smaller 1/4 inch seam because you don't want the bulk underneath. For garment construction, you want that little extra of the fabric in case you either have to adjust seams, later in life, or you just have a little bit more fabric to give weight to the garment. Whereas with quilting, it's going to be very small. It's a very small seam. All right. So I just want to show you something very quickly here. And really, this is where, if you are a quilter, you already know this. There are different rotary cutters, right? Different rotary cutters. There's the kind that, like this one, that has a grip to it. There's some that are straight. You know what, guys? It really is up to you what style you like. It really is up to you what style you like. The other thing that I do want to kind of draw your attention to is rotary cutters. It seems very intuitive, but they're super sharp. And you don't laugh at me when I say that, because I have the very first rotary cutter. I was holding it that I ever used. I was holding it up here and I pulled it back and I cut my finger. It is a rolling razor blade, right? So that's why you should always keep them in the locked position when you're not using it. Super important, right? Super important. So now if I do this right, I'm just going to cut, and look at how fast and easy that is with a rotary cutter. And I see someone, Brent, I see it, even a dull one is sharp. I agree with you on that. So please, please be careful. But check out how easy, rather than using a scissors. Can you all see I just went almost too far. What I'm doing here is I'm just cutting my center piece that fast and easy, and do as I say. There's the center piece for my little block. And so it's really that easy to cut all, like if you're doing 5 or 16 of these little blocks, it's so much faster and easier to use that rotary cutter. And I also want to share with you, if you look at the back of my block, see how there's not as much bulk, but there is a lot of seams, and that's what quilters and that's what quilting is putting a lot of seams together. So do realize that it is important that you basically keep the 1/4 inch seam and make sure that you've got it a nice, basically a nice finish for that. Okay. So any questions, guys, yet for me?
Not really.
All right. I think, you know, quilting is a great hobby, really, really great hobby. Now, I do want to show you one other stitch application. I know we're still on a straight stitch, but this will actually move us to a zigzag stitch. Actually, real quick, Bianca, if you can bring me back again, it's just easier to show a sample if I am on the bigger screen. I want to share with you this little, this is one of my favorite little things that I've ever made. And it is actually, I have to smile a little bit. I don't have kids or I don't have grandkids, but gosh, I still love this little dress. And why I'm showing it to you is the gathering. Okay, so this little gathering down here, to get a nice even gather, there are several different ways to do it. And I'm going to show you 2. Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 different ways. And the first way, so now let's go ahead and go back to the iPhone. And the first way actually is going to be with a very long straight stitch. Okay, so very long straight stitch. So whatever your machine, the longest length, excuse me for moving the camera that little bit, the longest length of straight stitch that you can have, that really is what you want. So some of you it may be 3, some of you it may be 4, some of you it may be 5. All right, so some of you it may be 5, but that is actually what we're looking for. Now I'm going to go back to my regular sewing foot for this. And when I snap that foot on, make sure, do you notice that every time I'm starting to sew, I'm making sure I'm getting my thread underneath the presser foot and I'm pulling a little bit of extra thread to the back. Okay, so pulling a little extra thread to the back. I've already done 1 row of this super long stitching. Okay, 1 row of the super long stitching. Something else that can help you with gathering is if you take your tension to a smaller number. So I took my tension all the way down to a 2, which is quite loose. So I've got long stitch length, lower tension, and I already have sewn 1 row of stitching. Now what I'm going to do, no back stitching on this. Okay, so no back stitching on this. I'm just going to sew another row of stitching. Close to the other one. Close to the other one. Then with those 2 rows of stitching, now I am going to kind of look over here and go ahead and make a little knot. And of course, making a knot on camera in front of you all, I know I'm not getting a good knot here. You can imagine a really pretty little knot. There we go. Maybe. So, okay, I just have a knot. The reason why, you're going to take your top 2 threads, so not the bobbin thread, but the top thread. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull it. Right? And the reason why I like to use 2 rows of stitching, okay, so I use 2 rows of stitching is look at how pretty and even that is. And the reason why I tied that now, it doesn't, you can make it look really even. The reason why I tied that knot is as I pull, I don't want to pull the threads out. So that's why we took the time to tie that knot. So this is the traditional method of gathering, right? So that's the traditional method of gathering. It can sometimes be frustrating if you break a thread, so you have to be a little careful with that. So I saw someone ask about a gathering foot. Certainly there are different gathering feet depending upon your machine. So certainly that works well. But I want to share with you my favorite way to gather if I don't have a gathering foot. And like I said, this is your traditional way. Okay, so this is your traditional way. 2 rows of stitching, super long straight stitch, and low tension. Okay, low tension, took it down to 2. So depends on your machine, okay? But this, okay, but that, now I'm going to move to a zigzag stitch, everyone. So this is our next stitch that we're going to talk about. And that is our zigzag. And really here with the zigzag, it just is, I said it looks like either a W or an M or whatever it is. But the zigzag is here. Stitch length. I want you to look at something with me. I took another, this is also stitch length, but stitch length with, okay, a zigzag. So this was my stitch length at 2.0. This is at 1.0, and then this is what's called a satin stitch, and that's at 0.3. Okay, so that's at 0.3. Now, why I'm telling you about this is your zigzag width. Okay, so length here, my width is at the top. For gathering, sorry, I know you didn't see that, so let me do it again. For gathering, I'm going to have my stitch length or stitch width at about a 3. For the overcasting, remember at the beginning, I showed you that little overcasting, that the width was at 4. But for my gathering, I'm going to set it at 3. Stitch length, I'm going to set about 2. Now, all of these different uses, everyone, what Singer has done is they have worked with and said, hey, a straight stitch, you can do different things with straight stitches. And those are called different stitch applications is what we call them. So gathering is an application that you use with a zigzag stitch. So I'm going to say it again with the zigzag stitch, stitch length of about a 2, stitch width of about a 3. And then what I did is I went into my little crafting closet and I found some pearl crown rayon. Okay, so it's called pearl crown rayon or embroidery floss if you have embroidery floss. Anything that's just a little bit heavier. And guys, what I'm doing, and this will take, again, this might take you some practice, but I'm just going to sew that zigzag stitch right over the top of that extra cord. And again, I'm sewing, this time I am sewing right down the middle of my fabric. Again, that was with that zigzag stitch. Same thing up here at the top. So where I started, I do want to tie a little knot here. We'll see if I can get a better knot this time. Because here's the cool part. Notice that cord, you can see it right there real easy in the pink. By using the cord, I don't have to sew twice. and the cord will not break. Thus, you don't have to worry about sewing two things. And look at how pretty that is. I really like how gathering over a cord can not only save me time because I'm not sewing twice, but also it's so I don't break my threads, because I've done that before. You're almost to the end and your thread breaks and it's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so it's very frustrating for that.
Couple of questions.
So, all right, so let's go ahead and, whoa, I'm gonna come back and come back to the other camera because we've got a couple of questions, and then we'll go on to our last little thing that we're gonna do today. All right, so yes, Vanessa.
Will you restate the settings that you used for gathering, both with the straight stitch and with the zigzag stitch?
Yes, so let's restate this. So with the gathering with a straight stitch, you're going to straight stitch 2 times. Stitch length, so stitch length, as long as it will go on your machine. So again, my machine, it's 4.0. Your machine, it might be again 3.0, it might be 5, whatever we're going to do. But basically, it's as long as it'll go. And then the tension should be a little bit less. So I took my tension down to 2. I don't want to take it all the way down. I don't want to take it to 0, because if I take it to 0, then it's not going to it's not going to work well at all. But I do take my tension to 2 for this type of gathering. So long stitch length, lower tension. For the zigzag, for gathering over a cord, okay, so for gathering over a cord, it's going to be, my stitch width is 3, so kind of wide, not as wide as it'll go. I like it to be not quite so wide because I want it to be a little close to that cord size, right? So stitch width of 3, stitch length was 2, and I don't believe I did, but you should have a regular tension. I forgot to take my tension back to normal. So for this sort of gathering, okay, with the cord, zigzag stitch, stitch width of 3, length of 2, and tension is pretty normal. All right.
The other question I had is, do you have any tips for how much fabric you need to achieve the desired length after it's gathered?
Yeah, Vanessa just asked, and I think this is the $1 million gathering sewing question. If someone can come up with the good answer for this, of if you want finished gathering of a foot of 12 inches, how much fabric do you need to get to that 12 inches? And I don't know that I have a good tip, everyone, because the thing is if I'm just going to go back to this little piece, right? If I only gather, a little bit, I don't need as much fabric. But if I'm really gathering a lot, then you're going to need more fabric. I can say, yeah, I see someone saying 2.5 times. It really depends on how much you're going to gather. I think what I would do is, again, I've got about I think when I cut this, it was about 12 inches. Yeah, Vanessa starts with a 10-inch piece. Okay, so 10-inch piece, and then you kind of pull up, see how much gathering you have, and then measure that. So if it goes down to 5, then you would need 2 times. So it just really, you just have to decide how much do you want it gathered.
And the thickness of your fabric makes a difference as well.
Thank you. The thickness of your fabric also makes a big difference, because you're not going to get as many gathers on a heavy fabric as you will on a light fabric. Okay. So we are, gosh, this time went very quickly. I see we're kind of running out of time right now. What I guess I want to do is I am going to come back here just a moment and talk briefly about this little sample. Okay, so talk briefly about this little sample, because this little stitch down here, guys, this was about what I used for gathering. Again, stitch width was between 3 and 4. This 2.0 stitch length, and the tension for the gathering with a zigzag. So this gathering, the tension should have been normal. I forgot to change it back, but it should have been a normal tension. You'll notice a little bit closer together here, you get a pretty stitch. And then when you bring your stitch length super, super close together, okay? So bring it super close together. Basically, you get what's called a satin stitch, and that can be used for appliques, that can be used for decorative sewing, all sorts of different things. When I showed you this little dress, I'm going to bring it up close to the camera. This is that satin stitch, right? So this is that satin stitch. And it is just a super close together zigzag stitch. I'm going to tell you a couple little tips. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple tips and then we're going to close, Bianca. I promise I'm going to let us go. The biggest tip is to take your top tension a little lower. Because what that does is that takes that top thread and lets it pull to the back and makes it look really pretty. Okay, it makes it look really pretty. So when you have a stitch length that's super close together, take your top tension to a lower number, smaller number, and it makes it real pretty on top. The other thing is, and you can see it kind of on the back here. Well, maybe not. There we go. I am using a stabilizer behind my fabric when I'm doing this satin stitch. So I've got a little stabilizer behind the fabric. And what that's going to do is that's going to make, again, that stitch look very nice and even and flat. Okay, so if you try this, you want, again, top tension lower, stabilizer. And everyone, I do want to make sure that you realize, and I promise Bianca, this is the last thing. She's saying it's okay, so I'm going to continue. Your normal sewing foot, guys, so your normal sewing foot here, okay, it has a flat back. It has a flat back. Can you see how that's a flat back? There is a decorative sewing foot that in this case is clear, and it has a groove. I don't know if you can see it. You'll have to look at your feet, and I'm probably too close, but there's a little groove behind. Okay, that groove on a decorative sewing foot really allows the stitches to move, whereas with your regular sewing foot, it can stop. Guys, I want you to be successful. I hope you realize that. So why I'm saying this at this time is if you try this and you take your stitch length super close together and your machine doesn't move, don't keep sewing, just stop. Just stop. Because if your machine is not feeding your fabric, that means that stitch is too close together. Does that kind of make sense? I'm seeing a couple of faces. Because it is really important that you are allowing the stitches to flow. That's why this foot is so really great. Okay, so decorative sewing foot, satin stitch foot for something like this. All right. Okay, guys. Gosh, I hope you learned some things today. This was really fun for me. I always run out of time, I guess. You figured that out already. Next week, we are on our 4th session, if you can believe it. Again, we're going to talk buttonholes. All right, so buttonholes, a little bit about blind hem and the multiple zigzag stitch. So again, it'll depend on your machine how we do things. So I'll show you a couple different ways to do buttonholes. But again, that's what we're doing next week. Remember, I want to make sure you don't forget, if you're making projects and you're putting it up on anywhere, do the hashtag make it with Michael's classes and singer sewing. And we love to see what you guys are doing. So anyway, thank you again so much for all your time. And hopefully you'll have some fun, practice, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye guys.